Good evening and welcome to the Smyrna Town Council meeting. I am going to call this meeting to order, and tonight I'm going to ask Hal Laughlin, our Director of Golf, to do our prayer, and Diane Waldron, our Town Clerk, to do our pledge. If you'll all stand with us, please.
Let us pray. Father, we thank you for this day and this opportunity to come to you in prayer before our meeting. Thank you, Father, for those that are here tonight that represent the leaders in the town of Smyrna that make the decisions on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to guide our town. Father, I ask that you put a hedge of protection around those that keep us safe, the first responders, the policemen, the firemen. Watch over them, Father, as they go about their duties. But I also ask a special blessing on their families that sacrifice for their husbands and wives so they can keep us safe. I also ask, Father, and thank you for your continued protection over us during this pandemic. Continue to watch over us and keep us safe and keep us healthy. We love you, Lord, and we thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Please face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Hal. Miss Diane? Miss Diane, roll call, please.
Councilman Cole?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Morrell?
Present.
Councilwoman Peebles? Here. Councilman Short?
Here.
Councilman Sullivan?
Here.
Vice Mayor Atkins?
Here.
Mayor Reed?
Here. Moving on to item 3 is approval or corrections of the minutes of the July 13th, 2021 and July 29th, 2021 meetings. Jeff, are these in order? Great. Are there any additions or corrections that need to be made to the minutes? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve the minute.
A motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll now move on to correspondence and communications. Anything tonight? Then we'll move on to awards and recognitions. And do you want to talk a little bit about our 20 years of our First Tee program?
Yes, Mayor, I appreciate you allowing me to have this privilege. I wanted to speak a little bit about our First Tee program. We actually are celebrating 21 years of the First Tee program, but because of COVID, we actually just finished up our 20th year participation. And I will tell you, if you've not had the pleasure of being out on that course when those young folks are out there, you've missed a great opportunity. And we've got 3 gentlemen here tonight that represent that First Tee program: Scott Merritt, Hal Laughlin, and Tom Boker. We just really, I said that wrong, didn't I? Robert. I'm sorry. I knew that, Robert. I didn't have it in front of me. But we want to recognize these gentlemen for the work that they've done year in, year out, taking care of these children. And I have to tell you a cute story. Pat and I went out and got a cart and rode the course as they were playing their little tournament this year. And there was one of the dads playing with his son that had on a Tennessee hat and a Tennessee shirt. And the young man was dressed in red and black, a red shirt and black shorts. And I thought, house divided, we have a Georgia fan. And that little boy spun around and looked at me and said, Tiger Woods Sunday. So don't misinterpret the attire, folks. He was very adamant about that. Great opportunity, and again, I just if you guys would come up, we'd like to recognize you for the work you've done and continue to do at our golf course with our young people, making the game fun, also teaching them life lessons as they learn the game of golf.
Can y'all look this one for just 1 second? Smile for me. Thank you.
You'll say anything while we come back up?
Sure. It would not be possible if it weren't for the city council and the town manager. Back in 1999, the airport authority approached us and said, we got 27 acres over here that was a cedar floodplain. Couldn't do anything with it, and they said, you know, would you like to have 9 more holes? Well, I had worked for Dick Horton and the Tennessee PGA for 2.5 years, and they had that little course around the Legends There was a 9-hole short course, all par threes. So I knew exactly what we wanted to do. 27-hole regulation course takes a whole lot more maintenance. So at that time, the First Tee of America was looking for people to open First Tee facilities, and they offered a $100,000 grant. So with Dick Horton's help and Mike Woods and Robert Mullins, we presented it to the council, and they bought it. And we built that course over there with a third of it was First Tee money. The day that we opened the course, it was paid for. And it has been wonderful. And that's where those kids play. But we started that First Tee in really in like 1999, but officially opened it in 2000. And it was because of the vision that you guys and some of you, that were around then. Were you on the board then, HG? I thought you were. And I never had a question. They all bought in, and the city built it, and it's been a great facility, and we had a big time. Pat couldn't believe how close I got to nailing 30 pizzas for 80 people.
We did, we had a great time.
So how many,
How many children?
That's exactly what I was gonna
How many
ask.
children come through the
Kathy
program?
called me and asked me that. It's over 2,000. Some years, it all transitioned. We were our own standalone. Back then, we'd run over 200 kids a year. And then the First Tee switched and went from, instead of quantity, they went to quality. And they wanted us to run a 12-month program with 2 dedicated and isolated employees and have programming every week. And we just really couldn't do it. And so we merged with the First Tee of Tennessee and became an affiliate, like a satellite. And so we're part of the First Tee of Tennessee. So now, this year was what, 60, 62? But we average between 60 to 80. And then they come in and do programming for after school for us. So we don't have to do that before.
And talk about the tiers of learning. It's not just about the game of golf, if you can remember.
You're going to ask me what the 9 core values are.
Well, just touch on some of them. Just touch, you don't have to recite them all.
Honesty, integrity. They can tell you every one of them.
Yeah.
Honesty, integrity, respect. And it all ties into golf, but it's more about just being a quality human being. Some of the biggest compliments we get, I remember one time I got one, his father comes up to me after the banquet and said, "What have you done to my son?" What do you mean, what have I done to your son? He said, "He's being nice to his sister. He's making his bed." And he said, the other day we were in Walmart and a friend of mine came by and I said, "Well, this is Mr. Smith." And he said, "My son took his hat off, looked him in the eye and shook his hand." And he said, "What have y'all done to him?" Those compliments mean more to me than a kid that comes through and says, "Hey, my son just shot even par." Well, we've had some kids come through it, though, that have gotten college scholarships. We had one this year that got a college scholarship who was in our ACE program. You see, remember Michael Chan? He got a full 4-year scholarship, so it's
It's more than just golf. And when you're out there with them, you can see that in those children. Even when the pizzas arrived, it was not a mass exodus under the tent. They were very orderly, very respectful, and it was so fun to witness that and
Well,
see.
and I want to publicly thank Scott
Yeah.
and Robert, too, because they've been doing it for
Yeah.
8 or 9 years, and they're out there in the middle of the week in the heat, and they love doing it, and they do a fantastic job. It wouldn't be what it is if it weren't for them, and then the other assistant pros who've come before them.
And Robert, you're going to be retiring here. You probably have the days counted, don't you?
Everybody wants to know if I have a countdown clock on my phone, but no, I haven't quite got it down that close.
But I want to point out that while I was under the tent listening to the speeches and all the fun stuff that was going on, I heard you, and I'm going on record tonight to say, you said you would be back after retirement to help with this program, right?
Well, I wouldn't be like,
Yeah. How you
Well-
told me to say that, right?
Yeah. Well, when I asked him, he said that's a strong possibility.
That's right.
You won't have anything else to do in this.
Well, again, we appreciate so much. I think we
Thank
ought to
you.
give them a round of
Thank
applause.
you, guys.
Thank you for what you do.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all. We can't tell you how much we appreciate the job you do in making our town a better place. And you do that through the First Tee program and many other things, so thank you. Brian, I think you have something else tonight under awards and recognitions?
Yes, there's one other that I would like to do as recognition tonight. Some of you know, I sent an email out a couple of weeks ago where we had an issue at the Smyrna Event Center affecting a gentleman that was choking. I received this note from one of the gentlemen that was there, Mr. Harold Grinder, And I just want to, if I could, real quickly read this to you. He's a retired CSX railroader, and he holds a monthly retirees luncheon at our event center the first Tuesday of every month. During our luncheon, someone from our group began to choke and was unable to breathe. The chef, Anthony Beverly, quickly came into the room to initiate the Heimlich maneuver. There were also two Smyrna police officers, Officer Bart Myers, Officer Andrew Manning, and Smyrna building inspector Mark Hardy, who were all three there for lunch, and quickly came to the aid and began to take turns trying to get clear the obstruction until emergency personnel could arrive. Paramedics arrived within 8 minutes after the call. I have been asked several times by city and event center employees about updates on his well-being. This has meant so much to me, his family, and our entire group that everyone at the event center has taken the time to follow up with us and offer prayers and support. Every one of these men that day used their training to quickly respond to an incident. The chef happens to be with us tonight, and I know the chef kind of led the way of working on this gentleman and doing everything we could to clear his esophagus and get him back breathing. They were able to get his breathing back, but unfortunately, he did pass away. I saw Mr. Grinder today at the event center, and yesterday was the gentleman's funeral. But I think, you know, we work with so many people that do certain things at certain times, and their training kicks in. And I think tonight, you know, we're recognizing 4 people, the chef being here, but 4 men that were heroes in the town of Smyrna on August the 3rd, and I just would like to show appreciation to the chef and his work. So, Chef, would you mind standing up? I will tell you, after seeing the chef, I got the call. We made it down there after the emergency services were already there and rendered their service and had left the building. The chef and most of the staff was pretty tore up that day, as you can imagine. And it's out of genuine care for our community, and I really appreciate that about what happened that day. And Chief, we'll make sure and get a copy of these letters. I'll ask Jeff Craig to make sure and put a copy in each of these gentlemen's file for recognition. Thank you, Mayor.
Chef, thank you for what you did. I can't imagine how difficult emotionally that was, and also physically that was. It doesn't surprise me that employees of the town of Smyrna jump into action, no matter where you are. I think we always talk about what a great community we live in, and I think this is proof of that. So thank you for being willing to step up. We appreciate it. Okay, we will move on to our consent agenda, and these are items that are determined by the town manager to not necessarily need individual discussion, but if there's an item that a council member would like to pull off and vote on individually or discuss individually, we can do that. I do like to read these consent agenda items so that those in the audience as well as those at home know what we're voting on. Our first item is approval of the terms of and authorization for the mayor to execute a contract with Motorola relative to a radio system maintenance for the police department. Item B, approval of the terms of and authorization for the mayor to execute amendment number 2 with TDOT relative to the Sam Ridley Parkway widening project. Item C, approval of the terms of and authorization for the mayor to execute change order 3 with Greenway of Nashville to construct the industry gate at Zama Park. Item D, approval of the terms of and authorization for the mayor to execute a memorandum of understanding with WGNS for application to the FCC to place a radio transmitter for emergency information broadcast. Item E, consideration of the declaration of surplus items. And our last item, item F, approval of the terms of and authorization for the mayor to execute a professional services agreement with Tolbert Law to perform title work and closing services for the North Lowry Waterline Project. Council, is there anything you'd like to pull off and discuss individually? Seeing none, do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda passes. We'll now move on to old business. Tonight, we have 8 public hearings. And our first one is a consideration of a resolution relative to a plan of services for property located on tax map 50, parcel 23.00, 23.01, and part of parcel 22.00. Kevin?
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is the plan of services for the annexation, which is the next item on your agenda. This is, was put in writing, the services that the town will be providing upon the effective date of annexation of the property. The town will be providing all services to this property upon annexation except for water, which will be provided by Consolidated Utility District. The Planning Commission recommended approval of this plan of services, and I would also recommend approval.
Questions or comments for Kevin on this one? Seeing none, we will go to the public to see if there's anyone here to speak for or against this item.
My name's Carol
If you'll come forward and if you'll, yeah, sure. If you'll just come forward and if you'll state your name and your address.
My name is Carolyn Conley. I live at 601 Olive Branch Road, which is the property backing straight up to this development that's being proposed. The property, if you look at the plat, looks like a little rocket that looks like a starship towards the end on the, going north, I guess, where you can see the little kind of crook to the end where it's yellow and then it kind of crooks in. I have a few concerns. Of course, we talked about in your past meetings about a road where it's not going to be intermingling with the residents. My big concern is going to be a noise from the warehouses that are going to be placed in there with traffic. I work, I get up very early in the morning. I get up at 3 in the morning, so I try to go to sleep about 8:30, which for a lot of folks, you know, oh, you're old, you're going to sleep early now, so I have to get up early. And I'm concerned about that. If the construction is going to bring any crime, possibly, that might be showing up because of it's a quiet neighborhood. It has been for years. I've been out there for 10 years. And I have a deep concern because, as you can see, our property line backs straight up to, at the end of Olive Branch Road is 601. It's the dead end part. And of course, with all the construction, it's been kind of, our peace has been disrupted from this, but we understand that with the sewer line and things going in, that's going to happen. Again, peaceful neighborhood. It's nice, quiet back there. Have a nice yard. I just am concerned about my quality of life back there.
Okay.
Okay, sound barriers, maybe, I don't know. Would somebody be contacting us, perhaps, to discuss any of this with us, or?
We can have our planner get in touch with you, and so we'll make sure that Kevin gets your contact info.
Outstanding.
Okay?
Thank you,
Great,
ma'am.
thank you. Anyone else to speak before this body? If you'll state your name and your address, please.
Sure. I'm Dr. Kim Godwin, and I am at 611 Olive Branch, so I am 2 down from Carol. And so when you look at the map, mine doesn't specifically touch it, but the assumption that it doesn't touch it means that we won't be impacted seems a little off kilter for me, I guess is the best way to put that. It's right at the end of our dead-end street, and as she mentioned, it's a very quiet area. We've dealt with a lot recently. I need to know that there's going to be something in place to make sure that the community that we have back there on our dead-end street is going to stay intact, and I'm a little concerned that everybody on that end of the dead-end street wasn't informed about this annexation. Just because my property doesn't touch it doesn't mean I'm not going to be impacted. So I think some additional communication with the residents on the street would really be a good idea, and more information for sure about there's not going to be a cut-through street, that there is going to be something in place to prevent additional sound and noise from coming through, and that people can't come in from the warehouse side and sneak into my back field. So that's all. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else to speak for or against this item? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and go to the council for a motion on the plan of services.
I move we approve the plan of services.
I have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Council discussion?
I think it, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was going to say, I think it'd be appropriate for Kevin to talk about,
Great.
they mentioned barriers and whatnot, to talk about what would be in place when we go from a commercial to a residential area.
The, what is proposed in the plan is a landscape buffer between, well, all along the property boundary there. It's, what would be required would be our most restrictive buffer, which is includes a berm as well as a 15-foot wide area of trees and shrubs. So that's what is in the plan, would be required, would be developed as part of the site, and would be required as a buffer there. There's nothing shown or in this plan as like a sound barrier like you would see like along the interstate or something like that. There's nothing in this plan for that. That is certainly something that could be discussed, I guess, but that is not a part of the proposal at this time.
I think one of the other questions was the traffic, and we do have, it's not a through street on this project.
Yeah, there would be no traffic from this development onto Olive Branch Road. They would all come back through to Midway Lane and Allenville Road.
Can you talk a little bit about information to what we do and what we're required to do in regards to informing those that are around the property?
Yeah, what we're required to do per state law is to put a notice in the paper at least 15 days before tonight. That's all we're required to do. We do, in addition to that, send the letters to adjoining property owners. And so that's kind of a standard, no matter if it's an annexation or rezoning request, no matter what, we do that.
But are not required to?
We're not required to do that, no.
But we try to get the word out to those homeowners.
We do try. Certainly, we hear that sometimes. We could do more. Certainly, we could send it to 500 feet out or 1,000 feet out, and then the person that's 2,000 feet out would tell us the
Right.
same thing. So, I mean, I think we could certainly expand it more, but eventually, at some point, we're still going to be,
Right.
someone's not going to get informed that maybe want it to be, but.
Okay, other questions or comments for Kevin?
I'll just say that last time we looked at this, I didn't feel real comfortable with it, and I was concerned about having Olive Branch go through to Elmaville Road, and I went and looked and sat down with Kevin and went over the maps and stuff like that, and it's one of those deals where essentially, what shall we say, that boat's already sailed. And any way that it would be done now to tie it into Almaville Road with a new road would be a very difficult road because of the traffic on Almaville Road. And I think that the best results that they can get is going down Neal Avenue and Rosswood Drive. Of course, eventually, it'd probably be easier to go over to Rocky Fork Road and access that to get on the interstate and such as that once that interchange does appear over there. But, really I was looking at and thinking about the community of Olive Branch Road back there, and I think it'll help preserve, the area back there, because you're not going to have people driving through the subdivision all the time and such as that. I know the Farrells very well back there, and I think that, they would probably understand that in the long run. So that's all I got.
Anybody else? Oh,
I have some questions.
Sure.
So, have you heard from anyone else about this project? And secondly, would the need to, or the opportunity to look at putting up some type of barriers need to be discussed with the developers first, to see if that's something that they would even be willing to do, or we're going to address that? Is that typically done after we vote on this?
Well, the first question, we did hear from a few folks along Olive Branch and along Neal Avenue, which is where we sent letters. Most of the people we actually heard from were along Neal Avenue.
Okay.
And they weren't as concerned because of the floodplain that's behind their house. There's more space, more room between their houses and this development than there is along Olive Branch Road. Because those buildings will be somewhat closer along to Olive Branch than they are to Neal Avenue. So, and that's really the only people we heard from, and they weren't as concerned once they saw the development plan and we showed them what it was. So, as far as the second item, I think that is something we could certainly discuss tonight. I'm assuming the developer has someone here representing them. Might be more appropriate at the next item, because that's when we're actually talking about actually voting on the development plan, since this is the plan of services, but I think it's certainly something that would be appropriate to discuss tonight, since it has come up tonight.
Well, that was the other concern, or the other question was, I know this is just about the plan of services.
Yeah.
And did we need to discuss this for the next item?
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor for plan of services. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes for plan of services. Item B is a public hearing on consideration of an ordinance relative to the annexation and PID zoning of property located on tax map 50, part of parcel 22.00, as well as parcels 23.00 and 23.01, requested by Prologix LP on behalf of multiple property owners containing 73.53 acres. The properties are located south and west of Amville Road and I-24, and this is a second reading. Kevin?
Mr. Mayor and Council, this is the actual annexation and zoning request. There is also the accompanying rezoning request, which is for a piece of property that is already within the town, so it has to be a separate ordinance. But obviously, the development is, and discussion can all happen with this one. This is an annexation request, as I said. It's property located south and west of Amville Road and I-24, also borders quite a bit of the I-24 right-of-way. Land use plan would support light industrial and commercial development in this area. Surrounding zoning is a mix of C2 and I2 in town and RM in Rutherford County. The town, as I said earlier, the town would be providing all services except for water, which would be provided by CUD. Sewer would connect to the Olive Branch extension when it is completed. A 4.5 acre portion of parcel 22 would not be included with the annexation. That area does contain an existing house, and they did not, the previous owners or the current owners did keep ownership of that property and did not wish to be annexed, so we are surrounding that area. The proposed PID, planned industrial development, is for an industrial development containing 837,200 square feet and 3 buildings. Access would be from a private ingress-egress easement to be extended from the existing industrial park located to the south, which would also provide access to the signalized intersection at Midway Lane, as well as to the separate access to Anvil Road between Neal Avenue and McNary Lane. The accompanying rezoning request, again, is from C2 and I2 to PID, which would provide the property for the connection to that existing industrial park. The tracts that are being annexed, there's a tract of land in between, so that would make that connection possible. The uses would be as allowed in the I2 light industrial district. A traffic study was completed. I did attach that with the in your packet there as well. Improvements that would be included would be adding a left turn lane at the secondary entrance, and there also would be several signals that would be retimed in the area. Did include the plan that was proposal as far as the buildings and the layout and everything. And the Planning Commission did recommend approval of the request 5-4, 1 against, with 4 conditions. 1, the connection to the Olive Branch public sewer line is not allowed. It's just kind of common sense, but we did want to put it in there. It's not allowed until completion of construction. An ingress and egress easement is required to connect to the adjoining South Park development. This is just asking them to provide the actual documentation of that easement where it has been provided and added and recorded. Parcel 23 is labeled incorrectly as 2301 on the plans. Ask them to correct that. And adequate fire flow as required by the adopted fire code must be provided prior to issuance of any building permits for the site. Again, Planning Commission did recommend approval of this. It is consistent with our land use plan. I would also recommend approval.
Questions or comments for Kevin?
Would someone be able to come and explain that? Or did you want to take a vote first? And
We have to do
further
public
discussion?
hearing,
Okay,
so,
do that first.
But before we do public hearing, is there anyone here with this, representing this group? Can you come forward and state your name and the group in which you represent and talk a little bit about a noise buffer?
Sure. Good evening. My name is Josh Rowland. I'm with Kimley Horn. We're the engineer representing the applicant, Prologis. And there's a representative from Prologis here this evening, too, if you have questions that I can't answer. As Kevin mentioned, we have a 20-foot wide buffer plan that has a 5-foot berm and a very densely planted evergreen tree row, double spaced. Those are pretty robust buffers. In large part along the boundary to the north near the Olive Branch residences, we have some existing vegetation that is being preserved, especially on the south side or the west side of Olive Branch where it's closer to the creek. And we have some fairly decent spacings that are well in excess of the 20-foot buffer along that edge as well. So we're not putting parking lots and buildings right up to that property line in that area. So I think today there's a pretty good buffer in place that should do quite a bit in terms of mitigation of noise and other nuisances. But I would like to state for the benefit of the property owners that Prologis is a very reputable and Class A builder. They build very nice facilities. They are secured. They are, well maintained, and they have great tenants. So I just say that to assuage any concerns about crime or other nuisances in the area. They're very diligent about how they keep up their properties and have a great reputation.
Okay. Questions for Josh? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thanks.
This is a public hearing, and so I will ask if there's anyone here to speak for or against this item. If you'll come forward and state your name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Rob Farrell. I live at 601 Olive Branch Road. Currently, at the end of Olive Branch, they have cut an access in to gain access to the sewer project. And they have cut a 30-foot swath through the trees right on the edge of the property. So right now there is no buffer right beside our property all the way down the site. My question is, along with the berm and the trees, are there going to be a fence on the property as well? Because trees and a berm doesn't stop anybody. It's just a noise barrier. The other thing is currently they are accessing that property to do surveys or drilling on this property currently from the end of Olive Branch. And they sometimes block the roadway at the end of the street. So there's some driveways that are being blocked. And I would just like some more courteousness about where and who is parking and how they're parking their vehicles.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak for or against this item? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. And let me get a motion and a second on the floor, and then we'll have some discussion about the things Mr. Farrell addressed. So do I have a motion?
Jerry moved and I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Kevin, can we talk a little bit about the buffer that was already there, that's already been cut out, and what's going to happen with that? And then can you address that at all?
Well, I can address it. It would have to, if it's gone now, they'll have to replace it. I mean, that's anywhere that they border residential, they'll have to have that buffer. So anywhere it's been cut out would have to be replaced. So, and the other issue about the parking in the street, I mean, that's actually a county road, so they would have to, I would assume the county has similar rules that we do as far as parking in the street, so the sheriff's department.
Would that be this group, though, that's doing this, or is that something separate?
That I don't know. Certainly it could be this group, certainly, or it could be something to do with our sewer project. I don't know. I can't.
So if it's on the sewer project end, is it something we can
Something we
address?
can
And
certainly
if it's
handle.
on y'all's end, is it something you all can address?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would dare say it's probably on our sewer system, would you not, Mike?
It's possible, but I don't know. I'll have to check with the contract.
Yeah, I don't know.
Can
that-
we just make sure through our contractors that they're not
Yes.
blocking driveways and all that? Okay. Okay. Is it common practice that fences around this type of development are put up? or do you all normally just do the berm and the, what's kind of, when industrial does up to residential?
I'm trying to think, we've had some industrial near residential, and when I'm thinking about, there was already a fence, because it was where Nissan bordered them, and where Topre was built and all, there was already a fence there. I'm trying to think where we've had other industrial next to residential.
We had that on Rebel Road with Steel Technologies, and there's a berm.
There's quite a bit of
trees.
berm and trees. I don't know if they had a fence there.
There's not a fence there.
Yeah.
They had to replace that recently too, did
They,
they not?
we do hold them accountable to keep that
Yeah, they-
berm
they had
alive.
to-
If
they had
trees
to-
die, they have to replace them.
Right.
Mark, Tim, and Kevin, give us some perspective as to what you think about a fence. If you were a homeowner there, is that too much to ask?
Well, just speaking to the berm and the classification of barrier here is the heaviest one we propose as a town. As far as peace of mind for the people back there that would like to see one, I mean, that's something we certainly can discuss if the developer's open to that. I don't know if it needs to be a broad path fence, but maybe something along those property lines there that could help give them some peace of mind from a sound perspective. As I sat here and look at this, I thought, you know, I don't know. I didn't hear any of the people that spoke. I didn't hear any of them mention if they received any noise from I-24 or have in the past. I'm seeing heads nod yes. In a sense, this may in fact help buffer some of that noise because the buildings will be in place. But then I think, okay, what would be, from a roadway perspective, HG described it pretty well. I think if you brought a road through there to Amival Road, now you're increasing a big burden on the neighborhood there. You're bringing through traffic from Amival Road back and forth, where in this case, that's not going to occur. So it is a quieter product as opposed to something that could be, for whatever reason, you know, density, apartments or townhomes or residential or whatever. So it kinda is a fit for off-interstate properties here. If we can just get the buffering satisfactory to everybody, I think to me it makes sense.
And you say it is our
It's our
strictest, thickest?
Yes, it's we have different levels, and Kevin can speak to this. We have different levels of what we require from a buffering perspective. This level is the heaviest one.
Okay. Anything you want to add?
You know, I know we mentioned a fence. If a fence were part of a buffering as far as noise abatement and whatnot, I could see the possibility of that, but.
It's not.
Exactly, and a project like this really doesn't generate crime. I mean, these aren't high-crime kind of areas. The fact we're dealing with somebody that's very reputable even gives me more solace there. I think the most important thing is that we do have, you know, the most restrictive buffer there, and I think, you know, in doing so, we address what could potentially be the biggest issue, and that being noise. And I mean, we've seemed to have done very well with some of the other projects. I know you mentioned the ones off of Florence, and I just don't recall, you know, from a crime perspective, I don't recall anything there. Because I mean, it's a very controlled atmosphere. It's not a you know, to me, if we were looking at a big retail development or something like that, where you had a lot of different people in, I could see maybe the sense of it, but I just have a feeling, and I tend to agree with Mark, this is a good fit. I mean, we have industrial in this area, we're bordering the interstate, and it makes sense to continue with that in this area.
Okay. Council, anything else? We have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item C is consideration of a resolution and memorandum of ordinance 21-28 relative to the annexation and PID zoning of property located on tax map 50, part of parcel 22.00, as well as parcels 23.00 and 23.01. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Our next public hearing is a consideration of an ordinance relative to the rezoning of property located on tax map 50, parcel 54.00, to go from IT and C2 to PID, requested by Prologis on LP. The property requested to be rezoned contains approximately 9.9 acres and is located west of Amberville Road, and this is a second reading. Kevin?
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is just the area that's on the map highlighted in blue. This is that area that's already within the town limits. It's not being annexed. That would have the C2 and I2 zoning existing, just rezoning it to the PID to be consistent with the rest of the development. Again, the same overall development plan and the same 4 conditions as part of were recommended approval by Planning Commission, and I would also recommend approval.
Council, any questions for Kevin? Seeing none, I'll go to the public to see if there's anyone here to speak for or against this item. Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and go to council for a motion.
I move we approve.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item E is a public hearing and is the consideration of an ordinance relative to the rezoning of property located on tax map 28, part of parcel 44.00, to go from R6 to PRD. It's requested by Alyssa Seibin. The property requested to be rezoned contains 39.1 acres and is located on Sam Ridley Parkway West and Motlow College Boulevard. This is a second reading.
Mayor and Council, this is the one, they did actually request for you all to defer this for 30 days.
Okay.
So I don't, if we advertise a public hearing, if you want to go ahead and have that, you can, I guess, but they did request that this be
Jeff, what do we
deferred
need to
30
do?
days.
It'd be better to withdraw it if they could.
That's not up to me.
You can defer it, but yeah.
I mean, they requested, the applicant requested that you defer it for 30 days for the second
So
reading.
what procedurally do
That's
we
what I
need to
meant
do?
was they could remove it from, ask them consenting to deferring it.
Okay, so they've consented, but do we need to vote on that?
Yes.
Okay. So do I need to hold the public hearing?
No.
Okay.
We'll hold it next.
So do I have a motion to defer this for 30 days? A motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second for deferral. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is deferred. Our next public hearing is consideration of an ordinance relative to the rezoning of tax map 18, parcel 6.00 from I3 to I1, requested by Frederick Grace, containing approximately 8.5 acres. The property is located at the corner of North Lowry Street and Aviation Parkway, and this is a second reading. Kevin?
Mr. Mayor and Council, this is just a rezoning request from I3 to I1. It's property at the corner of Lowry Street and Aviation Parkway. Land use plan would support heavy industrial development in this area. Surrounding zoning is I3 and the fleet equipment storage PUD, which would be behind it. Proposed use is allowed in both districts. The primary reason for the request is that the building setbacks in I1 do allow for greater flexibility in siting the building on the property, including allowance for the truck docks to be on the rear of the building. We did receive actually, and the Planning Commission did review the actual site plan for this site pending this zoning approval on second reading, and that is exactly what they did. They moved the building closer to the road and did have the truck docks to the rear of the building and gave them a little more room to flexibility to do that. So the Planning Commission did recommend approval of this rezoning request, and I would also recommend approval.
Questions for Kevin on this? Seeing none, we'll go to the public to see if there's anyone here to speak for or against this item. Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and go to council for a motion.
Move to approve.
A motion, do we have a second?
Second.
And a second? I think it was an echo.
Jerry and I in concert.
Motion and a second. Any discussion from council? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We're on to item G, which is consideration of an ordinance relative to the rezoning of property located on tax map 54, part of parcel 50.01, and amended the approved PRD on tax map 54, parcel 51.00, requested by Sean Collins and Andre Jekyll, containing approximately 15.2 acres. The properties are located at 8162 and 8286 Rocky Fork, Amberville Road, and this is a second reading. Kevin?
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is it's a rezoning request and also a PRD amendment request for 2 tracts of land there. Land use plan would support medium-density, single-family development in this area. Surrounding zoning is R3 and PRD, which is the Cedar Hills PRD in town, and RM in Rutherford County. This proposal is to rezone a portion of 50.01 from R3 to PRD and incorporate that into the approved PRD for Stewart's Glen. That existing PRD approval is for development with 20 single-family lots and 32 townhouses, and the amendment would allow for 18 single-family lots and 41 townhouses for a net increase of 7 units. The overall density would increase from 3.7 to 3.9 per acre. Access would be from Rocky Fork Allenville Road at 3 different locations. The minimum square footage would be 1,600 square feet. The townhouse portion, which is labeled cottages on the plans, would be age restricted. This development would be served by CUD. Fire flow is not adequate at this time, so they would have to meet that requirement before they could get building permits. The single-family lots would be served by a public street, but the streets within the townhouses would be area would be private. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of this unanimously, and I would also recommend approval.
Questions or comments for Kevin?
Was this one, I just don't remember off the top of my head. There were no issues with the fire trucks getting in or anything?
No.
Okay.
Do we know what the rationale for change was outside of just creating more lots?
That's the only thing I could say, yeah. I mean, it is a net increase of 7 units.
When will water flow be available out there?
I know that they are working with some developers, different developers, to try to work through that. CUD is needing an additional location for a booster station, essentially, or lift station. And it's my understanding that they have located that, and they've got, that is in the works now. But I don't know exact timeline of when it's going to be done, but I do think that progress has been made in that regard.
You know how many we have on hold until the,
Well, there's this one, there's Derby Run, Stewart's Creek Cottages, there's one on Morton Lane, any future phases of Blakeney. So that's 4. Seems like there's another one.
have they actually started on any of those or cleared or?
Yeah, they've started working on as far as putting the infrastructure in the ground and those kind of things, yeah.
So they're anticipating the water being
Anticipating
there
it's going to be
soon?
taken care of, yeah,
Okay.
We got some houses in Blakeney actually built.
with sprinkler systems, yeah.
Kevin says that the 1,600 square foot down, was that pretty much what all of them are, or?
Is there a difference?
Everything in this development would be 1,600.
1,600?
Yeah,
That's minimum, or is everything 1,600?
that's the minimum.
No. Is there anything larger than that?
Well, certainly there could be something larger, but the minimum across the board for both housing types would be 1,600 square feet.
And this meets the green space requirements?
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay, this is a public hearing, so we'll go to the public to see if there's anyone here to speak for or against this item. Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing and go to council for a motion.
Mayor, show me not discussing or voting, please. I will move we approve.
Have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to our next public hearing, which is a consideration of an ordinance relative to the amendment to the text of the Smyrna Municipal Zoning Ordinance to amend Article 2, Section 2.020 definitions, and Article 3, Section 3.180 fences, and this is a second reading. Kevin?
Yes, Mayor and Council. These are some text amendments to the zoning ordinance. And first, I want to apologize for any confusion that I have caused back by putting this on your agenda. It was certainly not my intent. These would be text amendments to the zoning ordinance regarding fences, and it's been discussed multiple times, so I'm going to try to be as succinct as I can and give you what your options are. Option 1 would basically which is what was passed on first reading, is to change the definition of decorative fences, which is no more than 3 feet tall, and they have to be wood, wrought iron, brick, or vinyl. And then would allow for those along the side property lines, but only on the side property lines.
All the way to the,
It could go all the way to the right
to
of way.
the right-of-way.
Yes, that was what was recommended by Planning Commission, that's what was, you all passed on first reading. Option 2 would keep the definition of decorative fence the same as option 1, but would allow for those types of fences no more than 10 feet horizontal feet and no more than 5 foot sections. Still 3 feet tall, but they could be 10 feet, total of 10 feet. And they could be located on the property, essentially like what our current ordinance is, just in better defined way, which is what we currently allow for. Is the idea behind it was you could have someone that has the split rail piece maybe at the corner of their lot, or they have the maybe some sort of brick entryway on their driveway on either side or something like that. That was the intent with the original ordinance when we did it in 2002. This would better define that, allow for that to still happen. You can enclose the yard. It wouldn't be all the way down the side property line because you can only do 10 feet. And
So yes would be, if we approved, yes would be allowing them 3 feet all the way to the road, all the way to the setback.
if you take option 1,
I mean, option 1,
yes,
okay? If we take the second option, or if we vote it,
yeah.
if we defer, I mean, if we turn it down,
Right.
then we go to,
Well, would be the second option, which would
Okay.
be allowing for it, but in a very limited way, like was the intent with the original, like I said, when you did it originally. The idea was to allow for those small decorative type fences people have. We don't want to prohibit that. We don't want to enclose the front yard. None of these would enclose the front yard or anything like that. But allow for, if we prohibit fences entirely in the front yard, then those kind of things technically would be illegal, and we don't want to do that. So,
I guess here's my concern. My concern is, if Tim's my neighbor and I have a wrought iron one, technically that could go to the road, almost to the road,
if you approve option 1.
if we approve option 1.
Right.
And Tim has a 3-foot wood fence that goes almost to the road, and then HG has his and Raquel has hers, what kind of neighborhood's that gonna look like all the way to the road, a different kind of fence?
You need to move over there with me and Steve and Jerry.
That's right. But I just don't know, it's one thing in the backyard, I don't know, aesthetically, I'm not sure how. I think it is inconsistent if everybody in the neighborhood doesn't have the same thing and everybody have it and those sort of things. That's the way I look at
That's where the newer
it.
developments have the HOA impact.
Right.
Right, but this goes much sooner than that. So
Right.
there is a concern about that as well.
And for new neighborhoods, I agree, but it's the older neighborhoods that, if somebody puts up a janky looking fence, yeah, how are you gonna feel as the neighbor who keeps your yard up really nice? So that's my concern.
Well,
And I guess
and-
I'd like to hear council's concern. What were you gonna say, something?
I was just gonna say, I think on the vote, you can make a motion to vote for option A or option B, and that's the only vote you'll have to take, and that will carry through. Will it not,
Can we, Jeff,
Counselor?
since the first reading was a vote for option 1?
Yes.
Okay.
But I think what Brian's trying to say is so that you don't be confused that you had to vote for A, B, or C. Just make the motion for whichever one you want to vote.
Both
that's okay.
options were in the first. I think there was a little more data that we could comprehend. It was, it was a lot, but it was in the original motion.
So if we went for option 2, all that's gonna do is clean it up for codes, but keep it as it currently is, where they could have 10 foot somewhere in their yard.
Right.
As more of decorative type.
More of that decorative type, and that's what we would if we had just, we said we want you to do one or the other just because we want to have something that's a little better defined. We would prefer option 2. I mean,
Gotcha.
certainly, I agree with you going all the way. We were just trying to come up with something to, again, come up with something that's clearer for our citizens and clearer for codes to enforce. We would prefer option 2. And essentially, it keeps, from an enforcement standpoint, it keeps the rules the same. It just better defines everything, where it's better for codes to understand, to enforce, better for our citizens to understand as well.
Perfect. Okay. Council, anything else before we go to the public hearing? Jerry, you look like you want.
When I think of the wrought iron fences, I went to some of the places and looked, and I don't think they are anything that is 3 feet. It seems like most of them are more than 3 feet. If you get something at one of the Home Depots or Lowe's, I don't think you can actually get anything that, like, it looks like wrought iron, but I think it's more aluminum.
Might be more aluminum or something.
Yeah, but I don't think it's actually, I don't think it's 3 feet. I think it's more than that. Yeah.
We came up, we looked at 3 feet just because of, I mean, there's a lot of, you're right, it may be right on that piece, but there's a lot of the picket fences and things like that that are more than 3 feet, and they may be wood or they may be vinyl or something like that, that those are made out of.
There is a 3-foot aluminum available. I had a neighbor put one up around his patio. It's not necessarily called a fence, it may be called a rail.
Okay.
But there is product available.
Okay. Council, anything else before we go to the public?
So I understand what you said, I understand what Kevin said. But we're not left with doing nothing. We have to pick one or two.
No, certainly, it's always an option to turn it
We can just leave it
down.
like it is.
It's always an
Okay,
option to turn it down.
That's what I'm trying to
Yes,
understand.
absolutely, yeah.
Is that even an option
There's really
at
3
this
options.
point?
Yeah, you
Okay.
can, yeah.
But what, the whole point of this was to clean up the language, and option
That
2 would
was-
clean up the language for you all, which is what's currently allowed.
And that was our primary concern, is just because it's probably, it's not as me as much as it is codes.
Right.
There's constant confusion amongst our citizens about what's allowed and what's not allowed, and
Okay.
things get put up because they think it's meeting our ordinance and it's not, and things like that.
Okay.
And so that was the reasoning behind why we wanted to bring it forward,
Okay.
so.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll go to the public to see if there's anyone to speak for or against this option. No one? Then I'll close the public hearing and go to council for a motion.
I move we choose option B.
Is that option 2?
Is it option 2?
Option 2.
You always have to be difficult.
Is there 4 options?
Okay, so we have a motion to choose option 2. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Kevin, can you outline again, so, I mean, because a lot of folks are watching this. Option 2.
Option 2 would change the definition of a decorative fence to 3 foot tall and has to be constructed of wood, wrought iron, vinyl, or brick. And it would allow for that type of fencing within the front, beyond the front setback, but only in no more than 10 total feet, horizontal feet, and those sections of fence could be no more than 5 feet. So you could have 2 5-foot or, 10 1-foot sections, whatever you want to do. Again, still can't enclose an area. You still have to be out of the right of way. You still can't be in an easement unless we give you an okay to be in an easement. All the same things we do for all fences. But that would be all that would be allowed in the front yard, would be that type of fence and that limited amount.
So if somebody wanted to put a corner on 2 corners of the front of their property and they wanted two 5-foot sections on each corner, they could not do that because that's a total of 20 feet. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And this
They
would
could
take
do
effect.
3, 2, 3, 2.
They could do, yeah, they could do.
Or 2, 2, 2, 2, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not retroactive, it'll start when?
It will start,
Immediately?
it will start tonight if you approve it
Okay.
tonight, yeah.
And existing fences that do not fall under these guidelines?
If they were put up prior to 2002, which is when was the first time Smyrna had fence guidelines, they would be okay. If they were put up last week, then there's an issue. But there's an issue already.
What is the difference in what we currently have in this?
What we currently have is, well, I think it's in your packet, but we have a definition. We basically allow decorative fences in the front yard, but a decorative fence is basically anything that doesn't enclose, screen, or separate. So
It's just defining what decorative fence
this
is.
is a
That's the
much-
only
it's a-
thing we're really doing, but
we're
changing.
better defining a decorative fence, and we're better defining when we say they're allowed in the front yard, what is actually allowed.
Okay.
Which is, again, no more than 10 total feet and no more than 5-foot section.
Okay.
It's a 3-foot minimum height. Is
3
there a
foot maximum height. Yes.
I'm sorry, maximum.
Yes, 3 foot maximum
Yeah.
height.
If you want it 1 foot, you can have it 1 foot.
Be a little fence. Keep your dachshund in.
Anything else? So we have a motion and a second on the floor for option 2. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. That one was rough. Item I, our last public hearing is a consideration of an ordinance relative to an amendment to the Town of Smyrna Municipal Code, Title 15, Motor Vehicles, Traffic and Parking, Chapter 6, Parking, second reading. Jeff, are you taking this one?
Yes, Mayor and Council, and your options are pass or deny. Just to show Kevin up.
Can we defer?
That's right. This would amend Title 15, and this is dealing with 3 different sections reference to parking of vehicles in residential areas. So when it comes to like more than 5 vehicles in the driveway, that type of enforcement, storage of tractor trailers in residential neighborhoods, and then the third prong of it, prohibited parking on certain surfaces such as grass, people parking in the grass in residential areas. All this amendment would do would allow the police department, in addition to, not in place of, in addition to the codes department, to enforce those provisions. And the reason for that is a lot of times when these offenses may be occurring, it may be after 5 o'clock or after 6 o'clock. And so there's a mechanism for enforcement of those codes. This would just allow the police to write a citation or issue a warning or what have you.
I guess I'm kind of surprised that wasn't already allowed, so. Questions or comments for Jeff? Since this is a public hearing, we'll go to the public to see if there's anyone here to speak for or against this item. Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing and go to council for a motion. Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll now move on to new business. We have a couple of items under the Planning Commission report. The first one is consideration of an ordinance relative to the amendment of the approved PRD for property located on tax map 54, parcels 14.01 and 14.02, requested by Bailey Neal and Legacy South Builders. The property requested to be rezoned contains approximately 19.47 acres and are located on Morton Lane. This is a first reading. Kevin?
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is an amendment request of an existing approved PRD. It's on Morton Lane. It's about 1,800 feet east of the intersection with Rocky Fork Allenville Road. The land use plan would support medium-density residential in this area. And surrounding zoning is a mix of R1, R3, and the Cedar Hills PRD in town, and RM in Rutherford County. The existing approved PRD, known as Stewart's Creek Cottages, is for a 55-up development with 76 units in 38 duplex/zero lot line buildings with one additional existing single-family residence, which is to remain. The initial requested amendments were to reduce the house size to 1,300 square feet from 1,500 square feet and to allow for a 5-foot side setback instead of 7.5 feet. However, the recommended amendments by Planning Commission are different. The amendments, as recommended, would be to change that minimum house size from 1,500 to 1,500 square feet to 1,450 square feet, and to allow for a front setback of 25 feet instead of 35, with the exception that the garage is still required to be set back at least 35 feet to allow for adequate room in the driveway for parking. These recommended amendments do not make any changes to the density, overall layout, or required architectural materials. They also do not change the side setback requirement of 7.5 feet, the fact that it's a 55 up development, or the requirement that at least 2 bedrooms in each house are required to be downstairs. So all those things are changed, staying the same. It's just those 2 items that would be changed. The Planning Commission did review this to recommend approval, and I would also recommend approval.
Comments, Tim or Mark, either one?
Well, go ahead, Mark.
Well, I'll let you, because I'm going to abstain.
Oh,
on
that's
this
right,
one.
I forgot,
Okay.
sorry.
Do you want to go ahead and say that?
Yeah, I'm abstaining on this one.
You know, when we looked at this, and we were looking at it from, several different factors, and I'll address those, it was important for us to maintain the 7.5 side setback, because we want to make sure that if there were emergency situation that involved our firefighters or whatnot, that they had adequate room to operate in. And this is something as a council that when we were kind of reworking what we were done with PRDs, we agreed that that was a very important item. So we looked at that, then we looked at the second aspect of this, and that was the fact that this is an entirely 55 and up community. And we wanted to reach a resolution in which that we could do the 2 bedrooms down, thinking that it could be a senior and a caregiver, it could be a senior and another senior, but we wanted to make sure that in the spirit of the 55 and up community, that we preserved a floor plan that allowed for mobility, and at the same time would ensure that we maintained the side setbacks, which we thought were important. So to get there, we looked at a couple different options, and the one that we agreed upon was the 25-foot front setback for the home and the 35 for the garage and driveway, because again, the 35-foot setback for the garage was something as council we decided was also important, so we kept traffic off the roads. So we took all that into consideration, and the consideration of who's the end user here. It's the person or persons that are 55 and older. They're more looking to downsize, and they're more looking to have that mobility within their home. So a lot of discussion on this, and it was something that after we worked through it, I felt like we came away with a good solution for this.
I think you're compromised. I think it was a great compromise, and honestly, I think aesthetically, it may look better.
Yeah.
Because it almost will look like the garage is not hidden, but back a little bit.
Yes.
So, I think it was a nice way to, everybody wins. Other questions or comments? Do we have a motion?
I'll move we approve.
A motion, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Our second item under the Planning Commission report is consideration of an ordinance relative to the annexation and R3 zoning of property located on tax map 32, part of parcel 1901, requested by J.M. Burns LLC on behalf of John Mitchell Burns, containing approximately 23/100ths of an acre. The property requested is located south of Rock Springs Road, and this is a first reading. Kevin?
Mr. Mayor and Council, this property that is the subject is located south of Rock Springs Road. It is adjacent to a portion of the same property which has already been annexed and zoned R3. Land use plan would support low-density residential in this area. Surrounding zoning is R3 in town and RM in Rutherford County. The town would be providing all services to this area upon annexation. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of this request, and I would also recommend approval.
Comments or questions? Tim, Mark?
This was just sort of a lot fix, basically.
It was an area that was, when they did the initial request for annexation for this area, they were going to end up building a road, but only having a house on one side, so they requested annexation just so they can build a house on the other side of the road, so.
Okay.
Is that gonna cul-de-sac or is it gonna go on through?
It will eventually go on through. At this point, it'll just have a temporary turnaround at the end.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to item 3 is consideration of an ordinance relative to the text of the Design Review Manual, Section 3.4, Architectural Character, and to the Zoning Ordinance, Article 5, Section 5.058, Lowry Street Overlay District, and Section 5.059, Enon Springs Greenway Overlay District, and this is a first reading. Kevin?
Yes, Mayor and Council, these are amendments, again, to the text of the Design Review Manual as well as the zoning ordinance relative to architectural materials. These are staff recommended based on recent changes in state law. This will bring the town into compliance with the new state law by not prohibiting any specific architectural materials, which we currently do in all three of these texts. We are recommending that certain materials be limited. And it's consistent across all three, so I won't go through all three of them. Basically, any material that's not specifically allowed as a primary or secondary material is now allowed as an accent material, and that is limited to no more than 10% of the entire building. Again, it would amend 2 sections of the zoning ordinance as well as Section 3.4 of the Design Review Manual. The Planning Commission did review these, did recommend approval, and staff would also recommend approval.
Questions for Kevin on this? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Boy, we could have some discussion. Thought there might be.
Don't get him fired up.
No, it's just, we've worked very hard as a town and as a council to look at areas, to look at materials, that will stand the test of time. I think you can see on Lowry Street what we're dealing with. And we've basically had state that stepped in and decided a local matter. And what's interesting is that for a lot of the folks that you see listed on this bill, including our state representative Mike Sparks, they talk about federal overreach into state issues. And to me, this is a state overreach into a local issue. And I would have preferred to have had a conversation with our representative to ask him why he thought that maybe on Sam Ridley, that we should have vinyl, or that we should have metal, or we should have materials that have previously not been included, and not been included for a good reason. So I appreciate the staff's working with this and working within the spirit of this to better serve us. I'm just disappointed in what I see as state overreach and not having someone come to us and say, what are you guys trying to do with Lowry Street? What are you doing with Sam Ridley? How about the new overlay? Why are we doing those things?
I can tell you at Mayor's Caucus, it's been discussed quite a bit, so.
It's very well said, too. I mean,
Agreed.
I think, I agree completely. This is exactly what state representatives complain about from the federal government, is exactly what they're doing to us. And I think that's the part that probably makes this so difficult, is that if they're getting into local decisions about somewhat trivial matters, such as whether or not we have vinyl siding allowed on a building, then what else are they going to come down with next? That's the frustration. And I think our staff, specifically Jeff, I think he did a really good job of staying within the confines of the new state law, but still protecting what we want to protect. And I applaud the effort that the way that you have worded and rearranged this to make it work for both of us.
Kevin gets a lot of credit for that as well.
Other comments? Do I have a motion?
I think you already have one.
Oh, we did? Oh, are we on 3? Yes. No, we're on 4. We have, okay. I didn't write it, sorry. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll now move on to, are we on 4? 5.
You're on
We'll now
4.
move on to consideration of a donation of property along Rocks.
We gotta do 4.
No, we have to do 4.
So I have to do number
Look
4.
at you. Get
I'm
me.
I'm off over here too.
Sorry, I won't pontificate.
Item 4 is consideration of an ordinance relative to the amendment of the text of the zoning ordinance to add section 3.210 regarding location of a structure on a parcel. This is a first reading.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is a proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance. It is just as a previous one, this is a staff recommended, staff initiated amendment. After a situation arose where a portion of a structure was actually built across a property line, this would add that all portions of a building or structure must be fully located within the boundaries of the parcel when it's constructed. This would include portions of a building such as an HVAC unit, soffit, bay window, retaining walls, etc., that don't necessarily always have to meet building setback requirements because they're not necessarily an actual building as defined by the ordinance. This seems like common sense, and I understand that. However, common sense is not enforceable in a court of law, so we have to have a written ordinance. So this will put the requirement in the zoning ordinance, and if this happens again, we can enforce it. So this would add a new section, which again is number 3.210, so all the wording in the ordinance that you see there is all brand new. The Planning Commission did review this, did recommend approval, and I would also recommend approval.
Questions for Kevin?
Kevin, did you write this summary?
Yes.
Just curious. I thought it was, I got a chuckle.
That was his intent when he wrote it, was to make sure you chuckled.
That was the whole goal.
That was the whole goal.
I honestly thought he was gonna say, seems like common sense, however, common sense is not so common, but he didn't say that. So, I finished the sentence before he did, and then I read what he actually wrote, so.
Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll now move on to item 5, which is consideration of a donation of property along Rock Springs Road by 1917 LLC. Kevin?
Yeah, this is just a donation of a tract of land. It's not a very large tract of land. It's not usable by the current owner, and they have offered it to the town. It would be beneficial to the town in the future. It could be, certainly, for any road or utility improvements in that area of Rock Springs Road. The Planning Commission did review this and found it consistent with the long-range plan of the town and did recommend approval. And I would also recommend approval.
Do we have a motion? Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item B under new business is packaged liquor board report. There were no applications for the town council to consider at this time, so we'll move on to item C, which is consideration of a resolution between the town of Smyrna and Rutherford County to provide maintenance for traffic signals at the ramps of I-840 and Jefferson Pike. Let's the birthday boy. Happy
That's
birthday.
me. Thank you. Appreciate it. Glad to be here. Thank you,
We're
Mayor
glad
Council.
to have you.
Britney version of Happy Birthday for him.
I know, please don't. First of all, just thanks for the opportunity to come up here tonight, and thanks for the birthday wishes. I got several from people throughout town, so I do appreciate that. This is a resolution between the town of Smyrna and Rutherford County. The signals are currently set up as temporary signals at the off-ramps of I-840 and Jefferson Pike. Once those get converted over into final stage and they are fully functioning signals, the town of Smyrna will have this agreement in place with the county to be able to maintain and operate those signals for the county. Any work that we do on the signals will be invoiced to the county under this resolution, and they will repay us for that. It is, I believe, on a 3-year resolution, so the costs for, and a description of equipment, personnel, as far as hourly rates will be adjusted in a 3-year basis.
Questions for Tom on this? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 9 is other. Is there anything under other tonight?
I did have to, I did have to make an announcement tonight that we'll be single sourcing, doing a single source to repair the Volvo grader. We got a cost estimate from the only company who can make those repairs, Scott Equipment. Most it's going to cost us $37,294.58. It could come down to $30,370.88, but since it was a sole proprietary expense, then Rex asked me to make that announcement tonight.
And just we needed the announcement, nothing else, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Anything else under other? Item 10, status reports. Ms. Diane?
I have nothing.
Brian?
Mr. Mayor and Council, I have a couple of things I want to share with you. I think we've got a couple of slides that are going to come up for us. Wanted to recognize some employees. The town just recently held a charity golf scramble. We do this every year, the last few years, for our United Way, local United Way of Rutherford and Cannon counties. And this year, I'm happy to announce that we raised over $56,000 through teams and sponsorships, and I think everybody had a great time. I'd particularly like to thank Jeff Craig, Mike Strange, Sierra Lowry, Tom Rose, Crystal Cole, Zaragoza for their leadership. I think I heard one of the folks talking about it today saying it was probably the best run event we've had. We had the scramble actually had 2 shotgun starts, one at 7 a.m., one at 1 p.m. I think we had 20 teams in the field in the morning round and about, 34 or 35 in the afternoon round. Is that right? 32. So it was great participation. And, the nice part of doing this is not only are we raising money for our community through the United Way, but it was fun to be out there and see all the different partners in town from Vijon and Taylor Farms and all the different community businesses that get behind this. So it was a great event, and thank you all for a great, great job.
I heard y'all's teams came in last.
I'm gonna let Steve have this.
Wait. Was that not what you heard?
I heard the same thing.
Last is what I heard.
Yeah, that's not accurate.
That's what I heard.
Some things are not worth arguing.
I'm not gonna explain it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't understand.
Yep. So.
The word last. It's last.
Okay.
Last is last.
The Smyrna Police Department is participating in a countywide school zone safety enforcement operation to keep our students safe as they return to school this week. We appreciate their work, and we appreciate our residents driving with additional caution. I mentioned this at the last meeting. The kids are back in school, so slow down through those school zones and pay attention to the bus drivers. When they turn the blinking lights on, we're supposed to stop, and when the stop sign comes out, you definitely need to be stopped. I will tell you, the other morning, I thought I was going to be late to work. I think he filled the bus up at one corner on Lake Farm Road, but I did stop for the bus. The Depot District is fixing to hold its Barbecue Fest this weekend. That's Saturday, August 14th, beginning at 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., I'm sorry. There'll be live music, good food. I think they have 10 barbecue vendors, 2 dessert vendors, inflatables for the children. Parking is available at the Smyrna Library, the Smyrna Senior Activity Center, and the Living Truth Christian Church. Front Street will be closed from the roundabout to College Street from 4 p.m. until the conclusion of the event. Come out, enjoy a great barbecue, and see some friends and interact with the barbecue cookers. So that's this weekend, Saturday, August the 14th, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. I talk about trash on a pretty regular basis at these meetings. Just want to remind everybody that, this is a choice that you make individually to throw garbage from your vehicle or out of the back of your vehicle. We just asked you to take consideration to our community and the beauty of our community. This picture represents 4 of our gentlemen that last week went out and cleaned up. We have an Adopt a Mile program, and they picked up from Enon Springs on Lowry Street down 1 mile and back. did a great job, and typically we'll have anywhere from 4 to 10 of our employees, and we do this, what, monthly, Tom? Quarterly.
Why does
So-
that picture look like they're picking up trash in front of the mayor's parking spot?
That was not trash being picked up, that was just a good shady spot to make the photo. So.
Good one, Steve.
A couple other things I'd very quickly like to mention, a couple things from the fire department. We received a nice certificate, the chief did, from a certificate of appreciation for the Smyrna Fire Department. Has demonstrated a commitment and dedication to firefighters' training and safety at the Tennessee Fire Service and Codes Enforcement Academy, with the accumulating total of 2,066 student contact hours in FY 2021. So great job, Chief, to continue to advocate for training, get our people in and get them trained. Also, Firehouse Subs, which has been a great partner for our fire department. There's several things that we've been able to achieve from lighting and different things. But they've recently held they hosted their H2O for Heroes event over the weekend, and the Smyrna Fire Department was the beneficiary of 125 cases of water that will come in very much needed as we do some of this summer training and those kind of things. But Firehouse Subs, again, thank you for all that you do, not only for the Smyrna Fire Department, but for our community. I do have a couple of other things I'd share with you. You mentioned Tom's Rose's birthday. I went back and told him he was one day closer to being an old man like me, so he's getting there quickly. So happy birthday to Tom. I don't normally do these kind of personal things, but my wife deserves this. She has put up with me for 15 years, August the 19th. And
She definitely
that's,
deserves it.
she's earned her wings in heaven, and she's earned a gift on earth. And it's not me. I will be buying her a present. I learned, I will buy her a
Oh,
present.
I'm glad somebody does buy presents
So,
for things like that.
She will be receiving that, but just a blessing in my life. I've been very blessed to have a wonderful woman stand by my side and be my confidant, my greatest cheerleader, and the love of my life. The last thing I'll share with you, Chief shared with me today in a somber moment, Lieutenant John Graves of our Smyrna Fire Department's mother passed away last night, so prayers lifted for that family as they move forward in their grieving process. Mayor and Council, that's all I have tonight.
Jeffrey L.
I have nothing.
Raquel?
Congratulations to Hal and the golf course on celebrating 20 years with the First Tee program. I also have an announcement that Ms. Fran asked me to make for the Senior Citizens Activity Center. On Saturday, August the 21st, they will be having their spaghetti dinner or lunch/dinner event. And the lunch will be from 11 to 1, and the tickets are $15. And then the dinner that same day would be from 6 to 9, and the dinner includes wine, and the tickets are $50. And there are sponsorship opportunities still available. And for more information, you can contact the center at 615-459-4839. And that's for the Senior Activity Center's spaghetti event.
Great.
And then also, thank you to Chef Anthony and the off-duty officers for stepping in and administering aids and administering aid, and my condolences to that gentleman's family and to the CSX family that was there while this happened. And lastly, prayers go out to all the citizens, the teachers, the administration, and the staff for going back to school. And I just pray that everyone will have a good year, and that it will be prosperous and less chaotic and a lot more peaceful this year after all that they've had to go through this last year. So that's all I have.
Thank you, ma'am. HG?
Yes, I'll start off tonight by saying, be kind and shop local. But I'm going to go on to talk about one of our good citizens who passed away in the last few days, and that's Miss Martha Ann Morgan. Growing up in the Methodist Church, every Sunday there were, certain people that you could count on being there. And Martha Ann Morgan and her husband R.V. were a couple of them that were there every Sunday. and have been a great part of our community for many, many years. Mr. RV passed away a number of years ago. He was a recipient of the Coon Victory Lifetime Achievement Award, and we know that Miss Martha Ann was right there behind him, and she will be missed in our community. That's all I have.
Great. Tim?
Condolences to the Graves family. Hal, again, thank you for the First Tee program, what it means to the community and to our youth. You know, a lot of times you see the look on their face, or faces, and you know that a program like that lets them know that they're important, so thank you. You know, I'm sorry the chef got away. You know, I had lunch there today with my brother-in-law, and, you know, it's not just a meal at the event center, it's a meeting place. And the chef, Rhonda, the staff, it's amazing how they make people feel welcome. And I mean, they can be hosting anything from a huge group, I think Aflac was there today, down to you know, just folks that are meeting there to have a meal, probably the best meal of the day, and meet with folks that are their friends. So thank you, Chef, and the event center staff.
Great. Jerry?
Just to reiterate some of the things that have already been mentioned, but Hal, again, thank you for what you guys have done. I remember somebody I worked with years ago, their kids went through it, and they're already through college now, and I remember them talking about what a great program it was. So thank you, appreciate it so much. Also, the Morgan family, I want condolences go out to them as well. Really thought so much of both of them. Also, Chef, and I talked to him last week as well. You know, what they had to do is not something that you want to do, and I have kind of had to do that before in my career, and it's just something that stays with you. So I appreciate what they did, and I know our fire and ambulance and police, they deal with that a lot as well, and certainly do appreciate all of that. And Brian, happy anniversary. Make sure that you guys do something nice, okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Steve?
I echo a lot of the things that have already been said. Morgan family, Hal, you know, I try to play golf once a week, so I'm out there quite a bit, and I appreciate the dedication and the time that you guys put into that facility. It's a great asset for the community, and I appreciate the effort. Your vision to add 9 holes and bring this program along, it really says a lot about how you feel about the sport. So I really appreciate it. Also want to mention this past weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we hosted Smyrna Adult Softball, and the town of Smyrna hosted the Spiders batting glove tournament. He calls it the Mega Draft. It's a unique format in which he allows individuals to sign up to play softball, and then he does a computerized draft to place them on teams. So they are playing with people they've never played with, often people they've never met. So it's become quite an event. He hosts these at Panama City Beach, Las Vegas, and Nashville. And host them. It's kind of a series that goes on all year. The people that play in this tournament travel to those 3 destinations as part of the series. So it's bringing people to Middle Tennessee, to Smyrna specifically. I had originally been told 27 states, but while we've been in this meeting, I've been corrected. It's 31 different states were represented in the tournament this weekend here in Smyrna, including some people from Canada. So we had a lot of people, 1,500 people played at the Rec Park, Volunteer Park, and some at Cane Ridge, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So a huge event. Went very, very well, and look forward. This is I think our 2nd year of hosting it. I look forward to being able to host this going forward. But the only piece that's left now is the national or the final tournament in Las Vegas. To get to Las Vegas, you have to qualify in Panama City or Nashville, and only 192 people are invited to play in the final tournament. So it's a pretty big event that's really kind of a new way of looking at adult sports, and it's taking off. So it's really nice to be able to host that. The economic impact to the town is probably unmeasurable with the amount of hotels and restaurants and gas and food that was purchased over the weekend. I know that our sales at concession stands at both parks were higher than I can ever remember an adult tournament being. So it was very, very large. The last thing is I've shared with most of the council, I think all of you guys, but my family had a dear member pass away a few weeks ago. My uncle, Doyle Hensley, who's actually from Tennessee, he's got a brother that lives in Laverne, but he joined the Navy when he was 17 years old. And he passed away at 96 after serving in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. So a 3-war veteran. Probably, I would say he's the closest thing to a patriarch that my family has, and one of the finest, most upstanding gentlemen I've ever met. He's going to be greatly missed. I used to spend a lot of time, every morning he would have his morning coffee at about 5 a.m. at his dining room table. So if you were in town or around and you wanted to spend any time with him, then just be at the table at 5 a.m. And so that was kind of the thing. Anytime we visited, he lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico for the last 25 years. So anytime we'd visit, I would always have 5 a.m. coffee with him, or try to if I woke up. And then the other thing, he recently, or not recently, he was, well, I guess recently, when you're 96 years old, anything in the last 20 years is recent, right? So in the last few years, he was interviewed by the local media, and they asked him, his secret for longevity. And, you've probably seen that conversation. And he said that his secret for longevity was that he drinks a martini every night. And so the news media reported that, and everybody kind of got a chuckle and moved on. And what's funny about that is he drank vodka in a martini glass with an olive and called it a martini. So his secret for longevity was a glass of vodka every night with an olive in it that he called a martini. But we'll be going, his memorial services this next week, so we'll be in Albuquerque next week for memorial service. He'll be interned at the Santa Fe National Cemetery in New Mexico. So a great loss for the family, but a wonderful man and a great life. That's all.
That's a neat story, and we appreciate his service, much like yours and your sons and everybody else out there that serves.
Well, I think he's really the reason the rest of us did it.
Yeah, sounds like it.
We saw something. We saw something in him that we all wanted to emulate, and none of us, I don't think, have ever gotten quite where he is. But I think he's the reason that a lot of us in the family decided to go.
We certainly do appreciate our veterans around here, and so one of the things I'd like to do, Raquel touched on the spaghetti lunch / dinner that's coming up on the 21st. I've agreed to be a sponsor, and I've got a couple of tickets I'd like to give to a veteran family. If they would contact me through the website here at town, I'd be glad to donate a couple of tickets to a veteran family. They can come by and enjoy the lunch. It's a lunch portion. So I wanted to reach out to and thank Hal for I've kind of been in a boot for a while, and I wasn't able to play golf because of that, but the course looked awesome, and the United Way Scramble, Kathy, all you guys, Mike, everybody, Jeff, Craig, everybody that participated in that to put that together. Mike Moss is back there too. Thank you for making that a great event, a good community event. We had a good time, we always do. I got booted off my team this year because everybody was busy with work and calendars and things like that, so I ended up playing with the winning team over here with, we won't go into that. I see the L up on your head.
Oh, my Lord.
But it's just nice to be wanted, I guess. If you can't play with one loser, you play with another. I mean, it's the way it is.
She was talking to you.
Next year, can we get our tea time directly beside each other so that we can just
play this out and get it over with. Thank you, Hal, though. Just, I won't get off too far in the weeds on that, but I do appreciate what you guys do at the golf course and let you know that. Back to school, Raquel touched on that as well. Of course, I have my wife is involved in the school system. It's a busy, busy, busy time. You mentioned traffic and school buses and everything else. Just pray for a hedge of protection around these teachers and the kids and the drivers and anybody involved with school, because it's a real hectic time right now. And then you've got a pandemic formula that's thrown into that right now again, and it's just sort of a hot mess. So pray for all those people. Martha Morgan was mentioned, and RV and Miss Martha were neighbors of mine growing up over behind the old Goodall Clinic, and I lived on Martha Street, and they were the sweetest people. RV was at that ball field, seemed like all the time. But my condolences go out to Miss Martha.
He was to what softball, he was to softball years ago.
He was the patriarch.
What Steve is today.
That's right. He was the patriarch of softball. He really was. And he could stack a team. I'll tell you what, you don't want to play RV's team. I got to thinking too about Tom's birthday. Tom, when Chief Arnold, I want to wish him well tomorrow. He knows what I'm talking about. But when he gets well, I think because birthdays are repetitive, it might be good to have him come back and sing "Oops, I Did It Again" for your birthday. So, Chief, you work on that when you get out, and make sure we get Tom a rendition of that. I do want to say a hearty congratulations to Jeremy Bird. Jeremy has done what a wonderful job on his building down on Front Street in the Depot District. If you haven't been by there to see some of the changes he's made, it is an attractive building, and he's added a lot of character to that. And what I love about our town and what I love about the Depot District is everybody's invested down there. It's just a beautiful place to go. Connie and I enjoyed some ice cream the other night down there at Gennardi's, and it's just a cool place to go down and hang out. So, Jeremy, congratulations on making your building look so well down there. I think that's all I have, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Couple things. Our Smyrna Depot Farmers Market is open each Saturday, 8 till noon through September 18th. And thank you to Carpe Artista and Smyrna Parks and Recreation Department for making sure fresh local food and handmade crafts are available for our community. And don't miss your opportunity to run. Registration is open for the 2021 Top Gun Night Run. The race will be held Friday, November 5th at 7 p.m. at Lee Victory Recreation Park. The 3.7-mile course includes Smyrna Rutherford County Airport and Smyrna Golf Course, with the finish line at the Captain Jeff Coos Memorial. Spectators and runners will get to enjoy live music and food trucks in the park. The run will be chip time and a limit of 650 participants, and we are filling up. And all proceeds for the race benefit the maintenance and upkeep of our memorial. I will tell you, it is a family-friendly event, and we encourage you all to participate. It is a lot of fun, and we expect a good time to be had by all. Even if you don't participate in the run, you still can come out and enjoy the band and enjoy the food, as well as cheer on those that are running. Anything else tonight? Okay, if there's nothing else, then we are adjourned.